Primitive reflexes are those sometimes called newborn reflexes, are those reflexes that help our infants to thrive and survive in the very beginning of life. I'm Dr. Linda Slack.
And I'm Dr. Kelly Began, and we're going to be talking about primitive reflexes. So, in this series, we're going to be going over every single primitive reflex. There's 9 of them, and we're going to be going over them in detail, why they're important, when they show up, when they go to sleep, and what they look like when they are present, when they shouldn't be. So, those are the things that we're going to be going over during this series. But, Dr. Linda, can you go in detail about why primitive reflexes are important and how do they help with neurological development?
Yeah, so primitive reflexes, initially in the beginning of life, they allow for the baby's movements involuntarily through the central nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. So in the beginning of life, though, all of those movements are involuntary, and they're there to protect the baby and to help them to thrive and survive. So for example, one of the reflexes we're going to talk about is the Moreau reflex, which is the startle reflex. And I know that any of you who have an infant, you've seen that reflex before, either in their when the infant's sleeping, or if there's a loud noise that like a door slamming or something like that in your home. So, and then as the infant grows, these reflexes really set the stage for the central nervous system to develop properly. So as the infant grows through their milestones, these reflexes will integrate and be replaced by more advanced or higher postural reflexes as they grow through their development. And so we want to ensure and make sure that they happen correctly.
Exactly, which is why in previous videos we've talked about how important those milestones are and why they're important to do them in a specific order, because those primitive reflexes, as they go to sleep, the brain develops higher up, higher up, higher up, which allows them to do more complex skills. So these primitive reflexes really go hand in hand with some of those milestones, which is why they're so important. Um,
So the beautiful thing is that as the infant is developing in that first year of life, so much is going on in that brain and so much is happening. And if something is occurring that is not appropriate, so the infant is not meeting a milestone, or they are born with have a traumatic birth, and so they haven't activated one or more primitive reflexes, we can make that happen. And we do that through clearing the interferences on that central nervous system so the infant can then develop normally from that point on.
Which is why chiropractic care plays a key role, because those adjustments can help balance that nervous system out, which allows them to have those reflexes either come back when they're supposed to or go to sleep when they're supposed to. So we can do that through adjustments and other alternative therapies that we do in our office. But the adjustments are definitely key. Um, but what happens when they show up? Like, why would they show up if they're not supposed to? Like, say I'm a toddler and I have a reflex that's coming out. Like, why would that be exhibited?
So that's exhibited through either a trauma, a severe stress, anything. For example, like if the toddler, now maybe you moved to a new house and it was very, very stressful for that toddler, or during COVID when everything shut down and there was no human community, the toddler couldn't go play with their friends. They didn't understand why. There was tremendous anxiety within our households. Things of that nature can cause those primitive reflexes to resurface for the purpose of protection.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear that like these primitive reflexes, although they're infantile and they can start in the womb, they can start through the birth process or a little bit later out in their infancy. These reflexes can be exhibited or come back or wake up in adults. Like Dr. Linda said, like COVID-19, she saw a lot of adults that had these primitive reflexes that were being exhibited because it was such a large stressor on their nervous system. So these aren't just things that we see in children, but we see them in adults too. So they never really go away. They just go to sleep or get integrated into the nervous system for those more complex reflexes to come out. So we can do harder things like climbing and running and stuff like that. So I wanted that to be clear that we as adults can have them show up too. So it's not just for kids.
And most people who have a neurodevelopmental delay or children with ADHD do show up on examination with retained primitive reflexes. And as we do certain exercises and adjustments for the nervous system we can reintegrate those reflexes so that they can function properly and better and maybe lose their diagnosis in some cases. So really, really important. We'll get into the specifics of each reflex, what it does, what happens if it is retained, what are some of the things that show up in a child as far as clumsiness, awkwardness, inability to slow processing, reading, things of that nature. So we're going to go into each reflex individually because each one has its own set of specific things that occur and a purpose. So that's why we're going to do each one at a time.
Yeah, so follow along for this journey through this series of primitive reflexes.
We look forward to seeing you in the future. This is going to be like an 8 or 9 series process. So look forward to helping you through this, and I hope you've learned something today.